And today is period 6, 1865 to really about 1900. I'll, talk about a little about American imperialism a little bit in here, and I really doubt there's really very, very much in there. Now, the reason why the Gilded Age is so good, I've emphasized past two times, even if you don't have a DBQ on it, it's the 19th century. I'm thinking the DBQ is probably going to be coming from the 18th century, 19th century. I could be wrong. You could get a DBQ on the 1920s. You could get a DBQ on like really the Wilsonian presidency, or maybe even to New Deal. I'm just kind of apprehensive about that. So if there is something in the 19th century, Gilded Age gives you historical context and complexity of understanding, the unicorn point. You pretty much know the Gilded Age from the Reconstruction, all right, from the labor unions and the captains of industry, to how did it even start here in the Industrial Revolution? How did it change society? What are we going to go over today with populism and immigration, kind of the reactions and kind of the effects of industrialization? It gives you just great, great context. And I'm telling you, you should hyperventilate a little bit if you do get something that has something that's related to the Gilded Age, because you will have some type of foundational knowledge about that already tattooed in your brain. Now again, you're sharpening the saw with this, so it gives you good historical context. So I am kind of playing that like kind of game about, well, what kind of DBQ you may get. And I'm telling you, several of you are going to get probably some different DBQs, but it's probably going to come from this 18th and 19th century. Don't worry. I am definitely not going to just throw out period 7 for sure. We are going to really hit it for the rest of this week and the next week as well. Now, that's why I'm kind of going a little bit details about populism, even though I don't think you really need to know great details. But Gilded Age just has a lot of stuff thrown in. It's just pretty amazing here that, what this kind of period encompasses here, post-Civil War here, and just what you need to know. Now, what you need to know, populism, you equate that with Populist Party, you equate that with the People's Party, names that you need to know. Sometimes, again, you know the work, you have the knowledge. They throw out different names to kind of see if you really know this or something, or you know what I'm talking about. Don't let that trip you up. People's Party is Populist Party. And we know that it really evolved and became kind of more of a nationwide movement and party in the 1890s. It evolved out of what we call again, I mentioned dates. You don't have to remember these dates. You don't even have to remember. I didn't put up here, the Greenback Labor Party up here. That's going to be forming, around this time. You got all the 1867. They want more money here. The Grange movement around in the 1870s here, and all the kind of Farmers Alliance parties, the Southern Farmers Alliance in 1890 and around that time as well, that they're all culminating and kind of had these kind of simultaneous kind of ideas to kind of coalesce into the kind of populist movement. And literally what it is, populism is what's popular. It may not be what the majority actually supports, but it's very popular amongst the public. That maybe you can kind of see that maybe today in certain political parties, like from the president, somebody running for president. Maybe it's national health care. Maybe it's going against making sure the borders are, are solid and there's no way you're going to minimize illegal immigration. You may disagree with these. You might even think in your head, well, they're not popular. They're very popular in certain areas and certain constituencies. And that's what makes it kind of a populist platform or populist idea. And one of the main populist ideas at this time here is this kind of like free money, or, more increase the money supply, the kind of monetization of silver. That's going to be a popular notion, even though maybe the majority are not going to be for that. What brings populism? And I have here. That's what you need to know. And I know I'm like, I get so kind of like want to, reach through here and shake you almost like that. If you want to pay attention to something, is why at this time is this populist party is beginning to coalesce and have an influence in the 1890s, getting people elected on their party platform, or getting Democrats to support their platform. Why? Farming problems, all right? There are some farming problems and challenges. Farmers are always a victim of their success. They're, producing more than they were, than even like 25 or 30 years ago, and they're becoming more efficient. They're becoming, again, that they're able to produce more, but what the double-edged sword of that, their prices go down. So how do they continue to earn a living? Well, maybe you even grow more, or you even maybe diversify and keep growing more, and that puts more products on the market, more wheat on the market, more corn on the market, but prices go down. All right, and they are always faced with, from the Great Blizzard of think around 1889, always some kind of geographical, climate problems that goes on in a way here that they're always affecting too as well. Banks and railroads are causing them problems. You say, well, Mr. Price, the railroads charging them different rates, eating up the land, reselling land to people trying to settle and trying to get a honest living on here, while they're the rich keep on getting richer, they're being exploited. Different kinds of freight rates that's being charged to them, that's making them less and less money as they keep working harder and harder to produce goods here. Banks loan them out money, but the bankers, when you have, I had a bad crop. Well, we're coming for your farm. We're coming for your horse. We're coming for your mule. We're coming for that steel plow or something that matters. So they're not really, again, that's becoming the enemies of that, of farmers and their problems at this time. So this is why populism is kind of growing at this time. And what I reached on here just to talk about somewhat quickly, you don't need to know demonetization of silver, the crime of 1873. You don't need to know the Bland-Allison Act 1878, Sherman Silver Purchase 1890. What you need to know about what went along with this populist movement, and people who would not even identify themselves as populists, they consider themselves just a farmer or just a common worker in the South or in the North, is that you wanted increased money supply. Gold standard is a very limited supply of money. It will keep prices down, but for farmers, they want a little bit of inflation. They want a lot of inflation, but they want prices to be a little bit higher. And they want the availability of money. They want that lower interest rates from the bank. So they want silver to be on the market. They want it to be monetized. They are silverites, right? Other people like William McKinley, and James G. Blaine, all the Republicans, Benjamin Harrison, you can see they're gold bugs. They want to grant their gold standard. They figured that's a more solid standard. Yes, you might have higher interest rate, but it's good for again, Wall Street and the money markets. So that's why you get this civil rights, the monometalist. Again, using these terms into your essay too is good to know. Monometallism versus bimetallism here. And you don't get confused. You almost should have one sheet that's the non-confusing sheet. 19th century means the 1800s. The bimetalists, they wanted gold and silver. On there. You should have almost a big, large 18-point or 16-point cheat sheet. What is these things that confuse me? Strict constructionism versus loose constructionism. That's confusing because you have to think about it for a moment. You got 45 minutes. So you say, hey, loose constructionism was Hamiltonians and the Federalists. They believed this span together. Strict constructionism was a Democrat Republican. You need a sheet like that like the you don't have to label it, but things that you can get easily confused upon, and then you write down, you make a careless error. In 45 minutes, I could see that. You know how careless errors just trip you up in math. It used to always trip me up. I didn't make it. Oh, I forgot to carry the one. I forgot that, or, move my decimal over. So think about that when you think about these terms. Like there's certain terms. Don't make a lot of them. Don't make a lot of them, but just things that kind of always kind of trip anybody up. It trips me up sometimes, like, wait a minute, 19th century, 1800s, and you'll see me sometimes get that confused. You'll see that. Wait a minute, strict constructionism versus loose constructionism, very confusing like that, at times. You have to kind of reset yourself about, on there. So anyway, so that is why they're there. Now, for my, my football fans here like that, we know of Peyton Manning, the Omaha platform of 1892. That was the kind of the populist platform that James Weaver, you don't need to know James Weaver, that was running on. Mr. Bryce, why we were learning about the Omaha platform? Omaha. Because you get 2 for 1. You get the progressives' goals and the populist goal in one shot, in one memory. The progressive goals, mostly 90% the same as this platform is calling for the most part. And you know what? The big contrast, you can say, progressives were more concentrating on urban kind of issues, and they kind of came out of this professional middle class or upper middle class, like experts know how to do some kind of social engineering, how to fix society, how to make progress. These people, like a Mary Lee's, like a O'Donnell from Illinois, like a William Jennings Bryan, they're the plains folks. They are the people working for people in the rural areas, representing that constituency in a way, and what they're kind of more apt to them. They're not going to be like these kind of things that some of the things that the progressives will be working for. As you know, they have a few problems with that separates them. But for the most part, here's why: because it's Omaha platform. They want a graduated income tax. They want an income tax to help out or defer the cost of small businesses at the time. Not like they want a Social Security check. They don't want that. They're not even thinking about that. But they won't do tax more to people with the money, so it can help out the country as a whole. They are into paying all their debts, into that. They want that. They want gold and silver. They want a bimetallic or bimetallist kind of treasury. They want more money on the market on here. This is what they want. They want regulation of the railroads. That sounds very progressive, kind of a regulation of big business, because they feel like they're being taken advantage of on here. I told you, 2 for 1. You're learning 2 for 1 right here from this Omaha platform in 1892 that the populists were running on. It's a platform. It's what they stand on. They wanted initiative and referendum. Maybe you don't know the details about that, but you know it's about voting reform. They want, they want to clean up political corruption too as well, just like the progressives. They want a kind of, a secret ballot. They want these things on here. That's what was on their platform in this time. And they even want banks to be almost nationalized and create postal banks in a way. You don't see the progressives really going that far as and they're kind of most of their ideas about reform of society. They want to kind of, keep the capitalist system in here. And for the most part, populists do too, but that was kind of more of a radical government-owned notion. Very much nativist, all right? And that's why I'm going to talk about immigration today. Very much anti-immigrant. Like, Mr. Price, well, why they're anti-immigrant? They're all for the common man in a way. They don't want to compete with that kind of, late cheap labor supply. They're looking out for the factory workers and somewhat the rural workers in competition for land and resources as well. So they're very anti-immigrant. They're anti-imperialistic. They're for women's suffrage, temperance, things of that nature. So they kind of have a lot of those things on. That was in the Omaha platform. So they're into this 8-hour workday as well. So all right, that's populism. That 1892 Omaha platform that's on there. And the reason why I took some time, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, is because you get 2 for 1. It's like, oh, that's what the progressives want. They want to clean up political corruption. They want to, like, regulate businesses. This is the general kind of like part of it right at this time. They want to make society better, just overall living conditions, and they want to help out the workers. They want to get rid of child labor. They want an 8-hour workday, just like the progressives. So they want to do all those things in here. Now, the all-star, the poster child for this in the 1890s, and is going to run on this kind of populist notion here, it's William Jennings Bryan. And I'll have his, that famous cartoon where it's on Puck magazine with the cross of gold here. And this can be confusing too. William Jennings Bryan is a Democrat. In 1896, he's going to take all this populist notions and agenda and kind of run on that. So most of the populists endorse him. His vice president is really, his nominee is like a populist person. His name is Tom Watson. You don't need to know that. But that's why William Jennings Bryan looks like he's running on the populist agenda. But he's a Democrat running against who? This is election 1896, William McKinley. And his cross of gold speech can be confused, because I think it can be, it's like, he is a civil right. He is a bimetallist, all right? He is a person running on a larger money supply. He's saying that people, farmers and workers, should not be crucified almost like Jesus Christ and persecuted on gold. Why do you have to stick with the orthodoxy? Why do you have to stick with the kind of Romanesque kind of like strictness of the gold standard? And we can do something that's better, right? And in the end, he loses the election. That's the main thing to remember, to McKinley. And even though William Jennings Bryan went across the nation, trained stuff, but I think with the panic of 1893, that people wanted more of a stabilization. I don't think that Sherman Silver Purchase Act helped their kind of, debate for, bimetallism. And McKinley wins in 96. He wins again in the rematch with William Jennings Bryan in 1900. I think William Jennings Bryan runs again in 1908 against Taft as well. But he does not win as well. But he's always running as a Democrat. And you see him again showing up in the Scopes monkey trial, again, kind of prosecuting, Scopes and everything. Because he is, again, these populists are very, for the most part, very religious, so almost fundamentalist at certain segments of them. Okay? Cool. So know that that you might get an excerpt from the cross of gold speech in there, but just remember that he's saying that people are being persecuted by such a strict standard. All right, coming up next, all right, is and I want to say the decline of these parties, the populist party, and just like most third parties, from the Know Nothing party, they get absorbed by, like, the Know Nothings by the Republican Party in there. So. And the populist party gets absorbed by the Democratic Party, and maybe even some of the Republican Party's ideas. Not like, they're taking over like a corporation, just their ideas and their platform. New immigrants, thing to know is fairly easy. Get the geographic location where this is more of the mass migration from what we'll call Eastern Europe and Southern Europe. Unlike the earlier, like in the early 19th century, you get more of still the British and mainly the Irish and the Germans coming over from the 1830s and 1840s. And this is going to be a much, 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 much bigger wave in the numbers in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. Now, to get in it, push and pull factors, you should be familiar with that. What pushes you out? War, famine, maybe government persecution. What pulls you in? Education, cheap land. That's what's being offered here. A job at a factory. More of this democratic freedom and opportunity. That's going to pull you in. And that's a combo platter that is, pulling these people into America at this time. Here's the thing is the reactions. You get a big, it's part of the tangle, the large labor supply. You get a lot of cultural blending in here. I always talk about the positives. Everybody's talking about like the negatives. That's why I'm trying to give you here that what so enriches America, the entrepreneurship, the kind of, the innovations and ideas that this immigrant group is coming in with, the democratic participation, the kind of, really taking advantage of what America has to offer, maybe compared to where they came from, and organizing in clubs, from Irish and Italians, getting into these enclaves and neighborhoods. People saying, like, oh man, they're not assimilated, but they're trying to organize, trying to find a way where they can, succeed. In here, and social mobility as well. Now, some generalizations, because I know we probably cannot relate this in 2020, what people think about these new immigrants: crime, they're, maybe disease ridden, maybe it's going to make the cities unhealthy, competition for jobs. It makes it really hard for real Americans. We always had this tradition in America: I was here first, and the people coming over, we should restrict them. It's always this thing about this and everything. We kind of love our immigrants. I told you, we hate them. We love them for what they can bring, but then we kind of resent them and hate them. They become the scapegoat for a lot of problems. The kind of causes for a lot of mass unemployment, or why you can't get a job. And you always hear this thing about assimilating. I'm always wondering about assimilating to what? America is such a diverse society. I don't know what they're trying to, when people say well, they should assimilate to what's American and speak English. I always laugh at that notion, especially today when there are more people around the world who are bilingual in English than actually understanding people. There are more of these guys than people with English as their first language. So that'll tell you. And again, America, I think some people close their eyes and they see in America and they think of this type of person and speaking this way. I guess it's just my frame of mind. When I close my eyes and see in America, I see somebody maybe with an accent, and it may be because of where they live in America. I see somebody who's kind of tan or brown because they're mixed race. I see somebody maybe even just maybe wearing a shirt that says that has a Tupac shirt on or something. It's just kind of blending, and maybe wearing a baseball cap. It's just. That's how I see an American to me. But I had this picture that even in the 19th century and even today, that when they close their eyes, they picture something else. And they don't, but to me, America is just so multifaceted, so multi-diverse. And every time I say the word diverse, people say, oh, you're talking about ethics, everybody's about this. Diversity means economics, it means background, it means religion, it means language, it means almost even into kind of cultural looks and how they were raised. It means a lot of things, and I see America as a very, very, very diverse nation. But that's just me. I'm wacky and crazy, so don't take that for a grain of salt. I guess I probably got it wrong. That's probably not the popular notion. You get really, these kind of legal acts that's kind of the Chinese Exclusion Act in here of 1882. I always get that confused with the Pensions and Civil Service Act of 1883. I kind of get those years kind of mixed up there. But again, this is something that's going to be 10 years, always renewed, and it didn't exclude every Chinese person. There are some exceptions, but don't worry. What you need to know is a restriction. And from 1920s, I'm not in 21, 24, but you get these kind of Quota Acts and National Origins Acts in here because they want to begin this kind of this nativist reaction, which is a word that you should know. Nativism, all right? That is a word to use. Like, you know, just this know nothing part, this native reaction to the early immigrants. You have a native reaction to the kind of new immigrants. You had the Klan having a very nativist reaction to, like, you know, the, you know, different kinds of people living in the country and their foreign influence. Very much a native reaction that you want to use. Words like this that I'm going to go over, like secede, nullify, de facto and de jure, that if you use in your essay, you're gold. You're going to be the man or the woman. That's what they want to see integrated as your answer to prompt. Don't just put it in just to be trying to show off or think you know how to use the word, but you want to get used to the kind of U.S. history vocabulary of what we use here. All right, cool. Just kind of, I think I had it at the end here, the kind of like you might get in the Gilded Age, all of this urbanism. You get these kind of dumbbell tenements because that's the way they were shaped. Pretty unsafe, but you know, more people can live. People are like skyscrapers, buildings are going up in the air because of what great material, metal at this time, steel. You know, and they're able to, and they're still using, a lot of these frames, a lot of these buildings still using iron, but it's a combo platter here. You have mail order catalogs. It's the internet of the time. You're out here in Kansas and you want to, like, you know, order some furniture from the East, and you look through a Montgomery Ward catalog and you order it, you send, you know, again, you mail it back, maybe a check, or maybe even take it to the general store and you get that in here. So you get these streetcars being on here. So, and even really the beginnings of the, you know, subway system that's like, you know, New York City and Boston too as well being built. So all these things to appease, to try to accommodate, not appease really, accommodate all this urbanization and people moving into the cities. Kind of changing on here. And department stores as well, just going to, like, now that you have certain, like the clothing department, you get like that. So, like, again, that's what you would have. And then the jewelry department, that's why they call it department store, because there's different areas on there. So in these stores, and you see this like really developing in the late 19th century, early 20th century here. Very good. So I'm just saying that you should, it encompasses a lot. It encompasses a lot. Now, I kind of will go through a little bit kind of quickly here, this American imperialism, because I think fairly recent, I told you the progressive and American imperialism was on a DBQ. So only thing that you really need to know about is the kind of imperialistic arguments. And you should know this always. American imperialism debate. Why are you for American imperialism? Why are you against? American imperialism for military interests like that. You know, we needed to deport Alfred T. Mahan. You know, saying that, you know, again, we need to build up a navy and build up our country. That's more powerful. For order to have that, then you need to have these coal imports in here. We really need it for business interests. We're thirsty. Now, I'm glad that term is not as, you know, again, people say that as much, which is good. Thirsty for raw materials and market. So we need that. So those are motivations for that. We want to compete with Great Britain and France in a way, you know, about like our interests. The frontier is closed according to the census 1890, and according to who? Frederick Jackson Turner, one of those all-star celebrities, know about his argument, his thesis that is kind of defined America as the frontier and now it's kind of closed. What do we do? And spread Christianity. On that side is the Roosevelts, the Hayes, the Mahans, the McKinleys, on this kind of like more this kind of pro, like, you know, imperialist. Now the anti-imperialist, it's not American, you know, and I guess I forgot this, like probably the number one argument too is this white man's burden in social Darwinism. That, hey, that is the reason why we need to civilize America. If we want to make the world great, we need to take our part in like Britain and France and kind of like, you know, raise people up. Well, the anti-imperialist argument, we don't want these inferior people kind of in American kind of dominance or in our kind of society in in the American way because they're really inferior people. So you can use that on both ways. We definitely don't want this cheap labor to be competing with America. We have enough problems at home. This is why Booker T. Washington, people like Jane Addams were really saying that, hey, what about, lynchings? What about, opportunities for African Americans, and you want to be going to, abroad to open up a factory and have, workers there. It's not the American way. It's unnecessary. You could, again, get us involved in war and conflict abroad. That's, not good. Like I said, again, you kind of hear these arguments again. And civilizing is just hard work anyway. We don't need to do this. All right, cool. And then you'll get into the Spanish-American War, 1898. Again, about a 2 to 3 month war in a way. And again, in their causes, again, yellow journalism, blowing up of the Maine. Really, I put up here that one of the main things to remember that you could put in an essay almost, economics and public opinion contribute to a lot to getting America involved into a war. From the War of 1812, from the Mexican-American War, economics, all right, in there, and public opinion. If somebody's reported that the Mexicans have fired upon, innocent U.S. troops, like I said, they pokes it down there to the southern border of Texas, then that that's what happens here. So economics and public opinion. So you get that with the blowing up the Maine, yellow journalism, the Lomé letter published in here, the atrocities that are being reported, by the Spanish on the Cubans. And there are some atrocities, don't get me wrong, but the exaggerations on there. So short war results. Cuba is liberated. We get some territories like Guam, Puerto Rico, Philippines. So, and that's main, territories and how we're going to, and we know what happens with the Philippines, about like, again, their rise, that was not a quick notion. They thought they were going to get independence somewhat like Cuba here, and that they're going to be left alone from the Americans. I didn't talk open door policy that goes along here, like gentleman's agreement restriction here with China. This is all about Americans kind of getting into the game. And I always say that theorize that like H.W. Brand says that we kind of was able to afford to go abroad here and start, showing our muscle and our, military strength and our economic strength that we can get involved in this game. Hawaii is annexed, by McKinley during this time, just make it official. Alaska in 1867 is kind of thrown in here, it's kind of on here. So Wake Islands and things like that, and there are negotiations and things that go on with American imperialism. The reason why I'm a little bit trailing off a little bit, I don't think this is going to be, and I don't know what kind of context it may relate to, definitely to World War I if you get some kind of DBQ on that as well. So I don't want to just throw it all out and say you should just dismiss it. So my notes are pretty good on this, okay? I think that I know just if people made it this far or maybe muted me and took the notes down. So I think that's it for today, and tomorrow we will start with the Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, original, so, and Progressive Era, again, for tomorrow. So that'll be it for today, and I'm hopefully that you guys definitely looked at the first 5 minutes. This has been a very important part, so just